Hi everyone. Once again, welcome to the Building Point Australia, a SketchUp channel, and welcome back to our series Go Beyond SketchUp. Still in the first chapter of this series, Back to Basics, and today we are going to talk about edges and faces. Edges and faces are the basic elements from which we can build complex models or any model in SketchUp. So from simple edges, like the ones you see in the screen, to faces, simple faces, is the way that we can create models, 3D models in SketchUp. So that's why it's very important to understand how these elements are made and how they interact to each other. As far as the SketchUp is concerned, an edge is formed by connecting 2 points in 3D space. So if I want to connect this point to this point or this point in any other direction, I'm creating edges. And they call edges because eventually, if I have a few edges, eventually I'm going to generate a face. So the term edge is that connection in between 2 points in 3D space that will generate a face. And I know some people use the term line, which is fine, but we are going to associate the term line to the command. Now, let's have a look at the command circle and the command arc. These two commands allow you to draw curves in your models. And it's important to understand that even though they're curved, they're basically a series of interconnected edges, as you can see on the screen. You can have the option of change the number of edges before and after you create one of those two elements. For this example, let's just get a circle and notice that here down in the measurement box, SketchUp has assigned 24 sides by default for every circle, but you can actually change that before you place the circle. So if you go to the measurement box and type 45, enter, the circle that you create there is going to be formed by 45 interconnected edges. And same with the arc. Once it's been placed, you have the same option of selecting that circle and modify the number of segments in the entity info window. So you can actually change the 45 to 30, for instance, enter, and then now that circle has 30 straight edges, interconnected edges. So it doesn't change the curve, it doesn't change the place of the element, but you can actually modify before or after. Another thing to know is that you can have a series of edges, like in this case, I've drawn 4 different edges, but you can, by select all of them, whether it's straight edges or arcs, you can select them, right click and weld them. And what it does is just that creates all these 4 edges that I had in this case as a one single entity, and SketchUp recognizes that entity as a curve. In fact, if you can see in the entity info, you can see that that's as a curve, even though it doesn't look like it, but it is for SketchUp, it is a curve, and that curve has 4 segments. Now, very different to arcs and circles, because if I go to the number of segments, I cannot change that number. Just the important thing here to remember is that whether if it's an arc or a circle or a curve, we have to understand that these elements are just basically made of a series of edges. And those edges can be broken apart or can be put together again as needed. Let's have a look now at faces. A face is created when 3 or more edges are connected in a single plane. So in this case, as you can see here, I have these 3 edges and they create this face. Now, the important thing to remember is that they have to be in the same plane, because sometimes you can have this very same edges, but they don't create any face. And the reason for that is because if we orbit around, then we will notice that in fact there are 3 edges, but they're not in the same plane. All the edges have to be in the same plane in order to generate a face. We also, in the modeling process, we're also going to encounter the term surface rather than face. So face is, like we explained before, is created by 3 or more edges that generate a face, like in this case, and you can see face in the entity info, and that's a face. When two faces are connected by the same edge, like in this case, I have this face and this face connected by this edge. But if I right click on that edge and soften that edge, once I select this, that becomes a surface. So that's one thing to remember, is that if two faces are connected by edges and that edge has been softened or is hidden, then that becomes a surface. Let's try to understand previous concept a little bit more in detail. And we're going to do that in this example with the sphere. When you create a sphere, you select that sphere and you can see that is a surface. It is a surface because it's a series of faces interconnected or sharing edges. If you toggle the hidden geometry on, you'll see that there's a lot of different individual faces, and you can see in the entity info window. These faces are sharing these edges, but these edges have been hidden. And that's why if you toggle the hidden edges or the hidden geometry on and off, things are going to change. And this is very important as well, because this is going to determine how some commands like push pull or follow me tool are going to interact with your geometry. If I toggle the hidden geometry on and select a face in this sphere, I can definitely push pull that face. But if I toggle, let's Control Z, if I toggle the hidden geometry off again and try to push pull, this is what I get. One last thing to talk about before we go is that once you have an edge and you intersect that edge with another, you break that edge. So in this case, have a look at my screen. I have one edge in here. The moment that I get another edge in there, that will break that edge in two. So that's perfect for edges, but for faces, that's not the case. So if I have this face in here and create another face like that, notice that they're intersecting, but they're still two different faces, unless you tell them not to be. And you can do so by selecting the two faces, right click, intersect faces with selection, and then you'll have one face, two face, and obviously this is still one, but has created, by doing that, intersecting with the selection has created an extra edge and split that face into two. So that concludes this video. And before we go, I just wanted to make sure that no matter what you do, no matter what your workflow is, it's just basically understanding how SketchUp works and understanding that every single model in SketchUp is made out of edges and faces, and understanding the interaction in between these two elements is the way that you can get better at your workflow process. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. If you like this video, press like below and share it with your friends. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.